afternoon, everyone. Your subject, or the next subject for the afternoon is, for the next 50 minutes, we are going to take some time and talk about how does this FMS process that the U.S. government run, how does it compare and contrast to the alternative that's available to our partners, at least generally available to our partners, to go out and buy directly from the vendors. This lesson is on page 191 of your student book. You can see we have 3 learning objectives, pretty high level items. And then on the next page, there are 5 questions. As I did the other day, the slide where we're addressing that specific question will have the number on there. If you're looking at your class schedule, I didn't earn a PhD since the last time I was here. Dr. Tom Williams was going to be here. He's TDY, so I'm here replacing him. Okay, direct commercial sales compared to foreign military sales. This is what this should be familiar to you by now. You've been here for a while. This is what you've been learning about. I'm not going to say any more about this. What changes when a country elects to go direct commercial sale? How does that relationship change? Well, it would look like this, right? The contract now, there is a direct contractual relationship. It is the foreign government negotiating the contract and enforcing the contract directly with the vendor. Uncle Sam is not a direct party to this contract. However, do we have a say? Of course. Because of the Arms Export Control Act, anyone that manufactures an item or service that's on that thing we call the United States munitions list, they are required, even if they don't export anything, they have to register with the State Department. They have to come up on State Department's radar, okay? Then, if they want to export, and remember from your tech transfer lesson, export isn't just items physically leaving the U.S. It can be, you can do an export here in the U.S. I could do an export here in this course if I conveyed technical information to a foreign person, okay? Companies under law need the USG, Mother May I, or yes, and we call that a license. And you learned about that in tech transfer. So we don't have a direct role in the contract. We have a role in approving what can be in that contract. I do want to remind you back from your tech transfer lesson. These license applications are not simply yes or no. It can be yes, but, and then there's associated with it what we call provisos. Things that the company has to comply with, conditions or limitations. So we might say yes, but only this far or this much or whatever, okay? And is there going to be a relationship between Uncle Sam and the purchaser? Well, there's not going to be a contractual relationship, but there is going to be some kind of political military relationship, correct? Otherwise, why would we be allowing our defense technology to be exported? Okay, so there is an informal relationship in that. Does Uncle Sam have a vested, or maybe that's the wrong word, do we have an interest in these things being successful? Yes, right? It's part of our relationship. So while we don't manage the contract, we would like these to turn out to be positive experiences. We would like the purchasing nations to actually be acquiring usable increments of defense capability that matches up to where and what we would like to see that nation be able to do. So while we say we aren't in DCS, we are in the environment around DCS. Yes, sir.
So I understand DCS and I understand FMS. Well, let's say we've got a DPC situation. A contractor coming in and provide some training. What's the license or export arrangement?
under BPC, it's, again, the BPC pseudo LOA is where we're arranging the financial and the acquisition of the item or service.
The pseudo LA will be chopped on by state, and that serves as their.
Right, correct. But again, there, under a BPC, that vendor is delivering to Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam then is in turn turning over or providing that BPC content. Okay, do you have a say in what companies do in your country? You're the SCO, you're working with the partner nation, do you get a vote? What? Yeah, kind of, de facto. These guys, when they come through, they should be, and remember, the SAM talks about your relationship with industry. You are there to facilitate them having access to the appropriate decision makers. So they should be coordinating with you. If they're selling defense stuff, they should be contacting the SCO. If they're selling commercial stuff, they should be going through the commercial section of the embassy, okay? But in either case, the embassy there is to facilitate U.S. companies doing commerce in the country. But for the SAM, you do have a vote. If you don't think that company, what they're offering is right, you have a voice, and for the SAM, you go back through the MILDEP, and ultimately up to DSCA. DSCA can coordinate over to state. Who controls those licenses? State. Okay. Our foreign partners, when we go through this lesson, usually they think this is the objective. We're going to tell them which system is better. I'm not going to tell you that because I don't think anyone can categorically tell you that one is better than the other. They are two different methods of acquiring. In certain circumstances, there may be conditions present that may offer some advantages on this side. On other circumstances, there may be advantages on this side. And we will take a look at a few of those comparison factors later. Okay, now the question comes, how does the volume of FMS compare to DCS? And here we're making some very macro assumptions, okay? And I'm going to start over here on the DCS side. Actually, you'll note here, state did put out the 12 numbers, but there's some problems the way they reported them for us to roll them up right now. But nonetheless, this is just to give you a sense of the space out there. What do you see between articles and services on the DCS side? Where's the big money? Services, okay? And that rolls back to our definition of what is an export. U.S. companies are providing this intellectual, technical type assistance that is grouped in under services to help out foreign countries. So that is the bulk of DCS, services. Now, if we come over here to FMS, do we sell services through FMS? Yes, but dollar value wise, we have a lot of service activities. Training is a type of service. There's a lot of activity. But compared to the hardware, services are a very small dollar value proportion of the FMS. Okay? So, if we take in aggregate the articles, the hardware side of DCS, and make a macro comparison to FMS and characterize this as mostly hardware type stuff, what do we see?
Pretty close.
A very rough parity. So what we're saying is our customers are out there, they're using both, okay? They're looking at the merits of a particular procurement and they're applying their criteria and they're choosing to use both methods. If one was significantly superior, we would see the numbers skewed. Okay, When countries are out there shopping the global market, we've already covered this, what do we prefer? They buy US, right? So if you think of this as a hierarchy, if they've decided to buy US, have we achieved higher priority goal 1? Yes. Okay, once they decide they want to buy US, their next decision has to be the mechanism. How do I want to buy that US defense product, right? So really, if we've achieved that they're buying US, that's the primary goal. The method becomes secondary, correct? And this is just, this is a Department of State news release. The Paris Air Show, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for, notice, you've heard of these folks before, right? Political Military Affairs. Where's she off to? It was Beth McCormick. She used to work at DSCA a while ago. She's off to the Paris Air Show. Why is State going to the Paris Air Show? Promote U.S. companies. Who's she going to meet up with at the Paris Air Show? Department of Commerce and, Department of Defense, right? By the way, who controls or manages U.S. participation at international defense trade shows? Well, the function of that is coordinated through DSCA. The DSCA has a function on coordinating that. But DOD does have representation there. What are they going to do? Engage with senior government officials, promoting business, and notice this. I found this was interesting. Ready to leverage the network of embassies and consulates. Who's that? That's you, right? They're going to leverage you to do good things. Okay, so when it comes down to methods, DOD is generally neutral. Okay? Not always, but generally neutral. And that's the answer to question 1. Question 2. If we're not neutral, then which way would we have a bias? We'd have a bias towards FMS. So you may hear this term, FMS only. The law, the Arms Export Control Act, gives the authority to the President. The President has delegated that to Secretary of State, but by policy, State relies on DOD to make those recommendations. Okay? So DOD may, for particular reasons, sensitivity of the item, relationship with the customer, a number of factors, may recommend that a particular sale go FMS only, government to government. I do want to let you know that people often ask, what is or where is the FMS only list? Well, when you talk to DSCA, there's kind of a list, but it's not hard and fast. The reason it's not hard and fast is, exactly, with Defense Widget A going to Australia, UK, no big concerns, okay? Going to Libya, someplace like that, now we have some concerns. So it's not always item-based, but the folks at DSCA, you've already learned about enhanced end-use monitoring, right? Items that have been identified to need enhanced end-use monitoring, there's a high correlation between those, a very high correlation between those items and the items that are required to be sold FMS only. Because if we have concerns about the end use and the monitoring, one of the advantages of bringing them under FMS is that we apply that enhanced function that you guys are going to, or your teams will be out there performing, where State doesn't have that robust type system on the direct commercial side. Okay, what else can we do? Can we have a hybrid? The answer is yes. I just saw in the news, defense news yesterday, UAE decided to buy 30 more F-16s, direct commercial. But on an F-16, are there some sensitive items? Oh, yeah. So there's some subcomponents that the US government still requires to be FMS only. That's what's driving this policy. Just because there's a subset of FMS only doesn't require necessarily the entire sale to become FMS only. We can let the bulk of it go FMS only, or excuse me, DCS, and we'll pull in those core items of concern into the FMS environment, and we'll have an FMS case that supports a direct commercial sale. And we call that a hybrid. This bullet, does your method of original acquisition lock you into how you sustain that item for its service life? The answer is no. You can buy it direct, supported FMS, or vice versa. You are not locked in. Okay. Again, we're looking at the range of things that can be done. Can the USG directly support a direct commercial sale? And the answer is yes. And just pause for a moment. This really came to my mind. We were doing a class for Boeing out in St. Louis, where they do final assembly on the FA-18 and the F-15. And when we go out to do a class at industry, because I find it interesting, I always ask, if possible, can I have a tour? I like to see that kind of stuff. And when you're walking through the final assembly, they got the jets lined up and they're working on them. But then they got this big section with a sign over it called Government Furnished Material. And you look down there, and what do you see? Jet engines, radios, all kinds of stuff. When we buy an F-15 or FA-18, we separately contract for a lot of items and have them direct delivered to the vendor to be installed. What we do financially is we avoid Boeing's what they call wrap rate on all that subcontract work. We go direct, have it shipped, and then we hire Boeing to put it in and install it, right? Well, when companies are used to operating that way, they may look to Uncle Sam and say, hey, can I get some GFE or GFM to support my direct commercial sale? And remember, do we want those sales to be successful? Yes. And as such, under certain conditions, we can in fact supply vendors for their DCS. Interestingly, what kind of price are we going to charge the vendor? We're going to use our FMS pricing methodology to come up with the price that we sell our GFE and GFM to those vendors.
What is GFE and GFM?
Government furnished equipment, government furnished material. This, you probably have to look at your screens. Again, this was the prior DSCA director putting out a letter, and this is something, as you observe, vendors come through and interface with your counterparts. This, while we support the direct commercial sales, those companies have no authority to commit DoD to courses of action, such as availability of training ranges, availability of government furnished materials, and other things. So what had been happening is those new business guys were leaning too far forward, trying to put on the hard and optimistic sale to our partners, and they were making assumptions about what DoD would do. And this letter is, hey, if a vendor's out there, you better have pre-coordinated with DoD. You cannot commit us to do certain things. We want to support you. We're willing to do it, but you can't make those commitments. So just be aware that has been a problem area. DSCA director put a letter out to address that. That may be something you want to just keep a little bit of pulse on as you see companies coming through promising certain things. Keep that in check. All right, So we saw what can be done. What can't be done? Well, mainly one thing. The customer cannot concurrently exercise the DCS process at the same time they've energized the FMS process. If they've done that, what have we just created? Competition. We have the FMS process generating an offer. We have the DCS process proposing commercial offers, and those two are going to be competing against one another. The U.S. government says we defer to a free enterprise process. If you've exercised that DCS process, we generally are going to withdraw. We are not going to, either we're not going to issue an offer, or if we've already issued an LOA, we may withdraw. Now, there are certain circumstances, because some countries actually have laws, which seem to make sense to me. If they're making major acquisitions, they need at least 2 offers, according to their law. So if the country has some significant reasons why they need to have both systems exercised, that's going to have to go into DSCA. They're going to have to look at those reasons and render a decision as to whether we will allow a concurrent FMS offer while there's a DCS active offer out there.
Do you know which countries those are?
It's a number of the Asian countries. I can't name them specifically. Okay, whoops. And remember, foreign military finance money program, that's through the State Department. That money that we make available, can countries spend that on a direct commercial sale? Well, okay, by law, and I can't give you the rationale for this, but it's in the law, these 10 countries represent the population of countries that, and I want to emphasize the word, that are eligible. They are not pre-approved, they are simply, it's a possibility that is on the table. Okay, so it's limited to these 10 countries, and it's a possibility. Now, if these 10 countries have FMFP available and they want to finance or fund a direct commercial contract, each contract, okay, each individual contract is going to have to be submitted to DSCA to be individually approved. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, so I'm going to go pretty quickly. Normally, DSCA isn't going to allow standard or FMFP money to be spent on standard items. Standard items, the definition of that is something we currently are using in our inventory. And think about it. If we have inventory control points that have contracting folks out there that are used to buying this, do they really think they can negotiate a better deal than our folks? No. Actually, GAO did a study, and the answer was resoundingly no. They were paying lots more for the same items they could have ordered from our supply system. Whose money were they wasting? Yeah, they're wasting our money, okay? DSCA, because they got to take a look at these, doesn't want to waste their time with a bunch of small dollar value stuff. Has to be a U.S. company. There cannot be any offsets tied into those direct commercial contracts because it's our money paying for it. We have other tools in our toolbox if we want to provide any kind of economic or industrial aid, right? So we don't want them to use the military money we're giving them to get offsets. Then the contractor, because again, GAO did a study, actually some people went to jail. They were taking our money, negotiating contracts, there was kickbacks and other things going on that shouldn't have been happening, and again, it was taxpayer money. So now, each of those U.S. companies that is going to enter into a direct commercial contract that's paid for with our money, this is like a 10-page certification. At the end, Vice president, controller, financial person has to sign this under penalty of perjury, which means they make false statements. These guys are criminally liable. So we tried to tighten up the process. So I probably talked disproportionately about this, but there's 10 countries that are eligible. Each individual contract is going to have to be reviewed and approved by DSCA if our money is going to finance a direct commercial contract. Okay, so what is the best? Well, one more thing before we get into some of the comparisons. A lot of times when people say FMS compared to DCS, they are comparing traditional FMS straight up, send us an LOR, we'll send you an LOA, then we'll go out and buy this stuff, compared to a traditional DCS where there's an export license and then everything is taken care of by the country. Actually, there are shades of variance between these two extremes. And this was, I think, question number 5. Maybe I left the number off this chart. No, question 5 is something different. But these are some of the differences. So we can have traditional FMS. 10 countries potentially can use that was down here. I got mixed up. Sorry. Start over. FMS can be funded with our money for military finance funds. FMS, they can tell us who they want us to buy from. Remember, we call that sole source. FMS, where they want to participate in our contracting process. If you remember the other day, DSCA director and the director of procurement policy issued letters about that. Just because they signed an LOA, they can ask to work with us as we go out to buy the stuff. They can, if it's financed with their money, they can have an offset tied to their FMS procurement, which is bringing in that industrial involvement portion within their country. We saw that they can have a hybrid. This is what I erroneously said earlier. The 10 countries are potentially eligible to use FMFP in a direct commercial contract. This is one that we haven't talked about yet. One of the difficult aspects of a direct commercial sale, a lot of these countries have international business expertise. They know how to negotiate deals, right? But how do you monitor your contract after you've awarded it? Particularly the way defense industry is set up, where they perform work because of our congressional structure. Companies try to spread work across a lot of different areas. It becomes geographically difficult to kind of monitor all that stuff. Well, this option is addressing the fact that the Defense Contract Management Agency is an implementing agency. They can sell their contract administration services to a country. And countries can come in and hire DCMA under an FMS case to oversee the administration of their direct commercial contract. So again, being impartial. When countries are out there wanting to buy something, we want them to buy U.S. Maybe some countries have a desire to go direct, but this is a problem for them doing contract administration. This offers them a bridge to address that particular problem by hiring us through the Defense Contract Management Agency to administer their direct commercial contract. Of course, they can have industry offsets with their own sale, but there is a range of options.
What do they pay? What do they pay the defense contract management agency? How do they reimburse them?
Well, it depends on, they have to kind of come up with a statement of work